After their initial encounter with the royal guard, the group of friends was silent for a few moments, still processing what had just happened. The excitement and nerves from their playful antics had faded, leaving a mixture of awe and embarrassment. They had approached the guard thinking it would be fun to get a reaction. But what they had experienced was far more serious and commanding than they had ever imagined. The guard had not moved dramatically, he had not shouted, but his presence alone had shifted the atmosphere. The friends now understood that the royal guard was not merely a ceremonial figure, they were professionals trained to maintain discipline, even under provocation. As the friends stood back, a subtle tension remained in the air. The streets around Buckingham Palace were still crowded, with tourists snapping photos, chatting, and wandering about. Yet, for the friends, the world seemed to have slowed down. Every glance they cast toward the guard reminded them that they were still under observation, even if silently. The guard's eyes were fixed ahead, but his awareness of the crowd, of their movements, and of the mischievous group was absolute. This realization began to sink in slowly. They had been bold, maybe even reckless, but now they felt a deep sense of respect for someone whose duty required unwavering attention. One of the friends, the prankster who had initiated the teasing, finally broke the silence. His voice was quiet, almost nervous. I didn't expect him to just stand there. I thought he'd laugh, maybe shake his head, but nothing. He didn't even blink. His words hung in the air, reflecting the astonishment of the group. They began discussing among themselves how trained and disciplined the guards must be. They speculated about the hours of practice, the strict routines, and the dedication it took to remain composed no matter the circumstances. Around them, other tourists had started noticing the group's change in demeanor. Some were smiling knowingly, remembering their own experiences with the guards, while others whispered to friends about the scene they had just witnessed. It became clear that the royal guard's silent authority was not just effective for the pranksters. It served as a reminder to everyone present about respect, discipline, and tradition. The friends had inadvertently become a lesson in themselves, demonstrating what happens when one underestimates the professionalism of those who serve in such roles. Encouraged by a mix of curiosity and caution, one of the friends suggested moving to a slightly different area to watch the guards from a safe distance. They wanted to observe, learn, and perhaps capture some photos, but they now approached with more humility than excitement. As they moved, the group noticed another guard posted further along the palace grounds. This guard mirrored the discipline of the first, standing perfectly still, eyes forward, every movement controlled and deliberate. It was clear that the entire guard system operated with precision and care. The group paused near a railing, careful not to cross any boundaries, and began watching the soldiers with genuine interest. They noticed small details they had overlooked before: the crispness of the uniform, the subtle adjustments the guards made to maintain posture, the slow, deliberate pace of each step during their patrols. Every action, no matter how slight, conveyed authority and professionalism. The friends began whispering to each other, pointing out these details and sharing their thoughts on how much training must go into maintaining such discipline. A sense of admiration began to replace their initial mischievousness. The guards' quiet presence was teaching them a lesson they hadn't expected to learn that day. They realized that what they had initially thought of as mere ceremony was actually a display of unwavering commitment, responsibility, and respect for history. Buckingham Palace was not just a tourist attraction, it was a symbol of tradition, and the royal guards were living embodiments of that tradition. As the morning continued, a few more tourists approached the guards, some curiously taking photos, while others simply watched in silence. The friends noticed that every guard, no matter how many people gathered around, remained composed. Even when a child ran close to one of the posts or a tourist tripped nearby, the guards did not flinch or react inappropriately. The friends exchanged glances, amazed by the self-control and focus the guards maintained. They realized that discipline was not just about standing still, it was about awareness, patience, and understanding the importance of their role. One of the friends, inspired by the experience, began asking questions quietly to another tourist who seemed knowledgeable. "Do they really never react?" they asked. The other tourist nodded. "They are trained to stay calm, no matter what happens. They understand that their job is to maintain order, not to be part of the chaos around them." It's impressive, really. People often test them, but it's rare to see a guard break composure. This explanation helped the group put the morning's events into perspective. They continued observing, noticing that the guards were not just stationary figures. Occasionally, one would march with slow, measured steps to another post. The movements were synchronized, precise, and deliberate. Even in motion, the guards exuded authority, demonstrating that discipline was not only about standing still but also about moving with purpose and intent. The friends began to appreciate the level of coordination and training required for such perfection. It was not only a display of professionalism but also a silent message to everyone. Respect and decorum mattered here. While watching, the group also reflected on their own behavior. They realized that their earlier actions, though meant as harmless fun, had been intrusive and disruptive. They had tested boundaries without understanding the significance of the role the guards played. A sense of humility washed over them, and they quietly acknowledged that this was a lesson they would not soon forget. One of the friends whispered, "I guess we learned the hard way." The crowd around them began to thin slightly as the morning went on, but the group remained, captivated by the guards' precision and composure. They noticed a small change in the energy of the area. While the streets were still filled with tourists, there was a sense of order that came from the guards' presence. People moved respectfully, gave the soldiers space, and spoke quietly. The friends realized that the guards' discipline had an almost magical effect on the environment. Their professionalism set the tone, creating a calm, respectful atmosphere despite the chaos of tourists and cameras. As the day progressed, the friends continued to observe, taking notes in their minds rather than with cameras. They wanted to remember the experience fully, understanding that this was more than a tourist visit. It was an education in respect, discipline, and history. The more they watched, the more they appreciated the subtlety of the guards' power. There was no shouting, no aggression, and yet authority was clearly present in every movement, every posture, and every glance. The prankster, who had been the boldest at the start, now quietly reflected on his earlier behavior. He realized that it was not bravery that had defined the moment, it was the guards' unwavering professionalism. He shared his thoughts with his friends, expressing how impressive it was that someone could maintain such focus, even when tested by mischievous tourists. The group agreed, feeling a sense of awe mixed with newfound respect. They began to understand that professionalism was not just a skill, but a character trait, built over years of training, dedication, and commitment to duty. By midday, the group had learned the most important lesson of all. Some traditions and roles are not to be tested lightly. The royal guards were more than ceremonial figures, they were symbols of respect, discipline, and authority. The friends realized that their morning of laughter and mischief had turned into an unforgettable lesson about humility, awareness, and admiration. They would leave Buckingham Palace that day not only with photographs and souvenirs but with a story that would stay with them for life. As they finally began to walk away from the gates, the group took one last look at the guards. The soldiers remained perfectly poised, their expressions unchanged, as if nothing had happened. But for the friends, everything had changed. They had been tested in a way they hadn't expected, and they had come away with a deeper understanding of respect, professionalism, and the power of composure. The experience left a lasting impression on their hearts and minds, one that would shape how they behaved in public spaces and how they viewed authority and discipline in the future. Even as they mingled with other tourists, laughed softly about their earlier antics, and shared their story, the memory of the silent, unwavering guard stayed with them. The lesson was simple yet profound. Respect those who serve, understand the importance of tradition, And never underestimate the quiet strength of professionalism. The morning's events had started as playful fun but ended as a meaningful encounter that left a mark on the group forever. As the afternoon sunlight bathed the streets of London, the friends continued their walk near Buckingham Palace, still processing everything they had witnessed that morning. Their earlier excitement and nervous energy had transformed into a reflective calm. They walked slowly, sharing thoughts in hushed tones, occasionally glancing back at the guards, who remained perfectly poised in their posts. Each step reminded them of the silent authority they had encountered, and the weight of respect it demanded. For the prankster, the one who had initially tested the guards' patience, the day had become more than just a sightseeing adventure. He realized that humor and playfulness had their limits, especially when faced with someone who carried not only a role but centuries of tradition and discipline. He shared his feelings quietly with his friends. "I thought it would be funny to get a reaction," he admitted. "But now, I see how much training, focus, and responsibility it takes to stand like that all day. I guess I learned respect the hard way." His friends nodded in agreement, their faces showing understanding and a mix of humility. They decided to find a quiet spot nearby to sit and reflect on their experience. A small cafe terrace overlooked the palace, and they ordered drinks while keeping their eyes on the gates. The palace was still bustling with tourists, but the friends felt detached from the chaos around them. In their minds, the lesson of the morning replayed continuously. That discipline, patience, and professionalism could speak louder than words or actions. The royal guards had communicated volumes without moving a muscle, simply through presence and composure. As they sipped their drinks, the conversation turned to the broader meaning of what they had witnessed. One friend remarked on how easy it was to underestimate people in positions of responsibility. "I thought they were just for show," she said. "But they are clearly trained to handle situations calmly and confidently. It's almost like they are teaching a silent lesson to everyone who watches them." The others agreed, reflecting on how this simple act of standing guard could inspire respect, mindfulness, and self-control in people from all over the world. The group began to notice more details about the guards as they observed quietly. They saw the precise way each soldier adjusted his uniform, ensuring every crease was perfect. They noticed how the soldiers maintained focus even while moving between posts, each step deliberate and calculated. The friends realized that every aspect of the guards' behavior had purpose. Nothing was random. Each movement was part of a carefully designed routine to maintain order, decorum, and authority. One of the friends, who had been sketching the scene in a small notebook, began to capture the expressions of awe and respect on the faces of other tourists. Children stared wide-eyed, parents whispered explanations about tradition, and even seasoned visitors seemed captivated by the discipline on display. It became clear to the group that the royal guards had a subtle but powerful effect on everyone around them. They were not only protecting a palace, but also embodying values that transcended centuries, values of commitment, focus, and respect. Time passed slowly, but the friends remained immersed in observation. They noticed that even when someone accidentally stepped too close or when a camera shutter clicked loudly, the guards did not react angrily or lose focus. The group began discussing how challenging it must be to maintain such composure under constant scrutiny and unpredictable circumstances. They compared it to jobs they themselves had experienced, realizing how rare it was to witness true discipline in action. Their discussion turned to reflection on personal growth. Each friend shared how the morning's encounter had changed their perspective. The prankster admitted he had learned a valuable lesson about thinking before acting and understanding boundaries. Another friend noted that the experience had taught her patience, as she realized that maintaining composure often required strength and courage, even when no one else noticed. The group concluded that the guards' professionalism was not only admirable but also inspirational, a standard they could strive to emulate in their own lives. After a while, the friends decided to take one last walk around the palace grounds before leaving. The streets were quieter now, with the afternoon crowds beginning to thin. As they passed the gates, they saw the guards standing perfectly still, as if frozen in time. The group slowed their pace, giving the soldiers ample space, and felt a deep sense of reverence. It was not fear, but respect and admiration for the men who carried out their duties with such precision and dignity. One of the friends suggested taking a moment to thank the guards silently. They could not speak to them directly, as it was not permitted, but they bowed their heads slightly, a small gesture of respect. Though the guards did not acknowledge it, the friends felt a sense of connection, a silent understanding that their appreciation had been recognized. It was a humbling moment, showing that respect could be communicated without words, through intention and mindfulness. As they continued walking, the friends reflected on the reactions of other tourists. Many had gathered in groups to observe, taking photos and videos, but the mood remained orderly and calm. They realized that the presence of the royal guards had a ripple effect. Their discipline influenced the behavior of everyone around them, reminding all who watched that certain spaces required decorum, awareness, and respect. The friends began to appreciate the subtle power of authority exercised with composure and grace. Eventually, the group found a park bench a short distance from the palace gates and sat quietly, savoring the experience. The afternoon sun cast warm light across the grounds, highlighting the beauty of the palace and the serenity of the area. They talked about how much they had learned in such a short time, recognizing that the morning had been more than sightseeing. It had been an encounter with history, tradition, and the human capacity for discipline. The friends noticed that some tourists continued to approach the guards, perhaps hoping for a light-hearted interaction or a photo opportunity. The group watched silently, noting how each new visitor was met with the same unwavering professionalism. The guards' consistency reinforced the lesson the friends had learned. Discipline and respect were not situational. They were constant, regardless of circumstance. It was this consistency that made the guards so remarkable, and it was a lesson that would stay with the friends long after they left London. As the afternoon wore on, the friends decided it was time to leave Buckingham Palace. They walked slowly, each step filled with reflection and quiet appreciation. The streets of London were lively with activity, but their minds were focused on the morning's lessons. They discussed how they could apply the experience to their own lives, whether in school, work, or personal relationships. The idea of maintaining composure, showing respect, and understanding boundaries resonated deeply with each of them. Before leaving the area entirely, the friends turned for one final glance at the palace gates. The guards stood as immovable sentinels, their posture flawless, their focus unwavering. The group felt a sense of gratitude and humility. They understood that this encounter had been a rare and valuable experience, one that few tourists fully appreciated. They had come to Buckingham Palace expecting fun and adventure but had left with a deeper understanding of professionalism, discipline, and respect. On the walk back toward the city streets, the friends continued to share their thoughts and reflections. They realized that the morning had changed them in subtle but important ways. The prankster, who had started the day with mischief, now carried a new sense of awareness and humility. Others in the group felt inspired by the guards' dedication and composure, recognizing the importance of respecting tradition and responsibility. It was a day of laughter, learning, and personal growth, all sparked by a silent, steadfast presence outside a grand palace. The experience became a story they would tell for years. Each retelling emphasized the guards' unwavering discipline and the lesson they had imparted without a single word. It was not just an anecdote about tourist antics. It was a story of respect, professionalism, and the power of quiet authority. They realized that some of the most powerful lessons come not from lectures or instructions, but from observation, reflection, and first-hand experience. As the sun began to set over London, casting long shadows across the streets, the friends made their way back to their hotel. They felt a sense of fulfillment and clarity, knowing that they had witnessed something remarkable. The royal guards had not just guarded the palace, they had guarded the values of respect, discipline, and professionalism. The friends knew they would carry these lessons with them for the rest of their lives, shaping how they interacted with others and approached challenges in their own lives. By the time they reached their hotel, the friends were quiet, each lost in thought. The morning's events replayed vividly in their minds, each moment a reminder of the importance of composure and respect. They understood that their experience was unique, and they felt fortunate to have witnessed it firsthand. They knew that Buckingham Palace would always be more than a landmark. It would be a symbol of dedication, tradition, and the quiet but powerful presence of those who served with unwavering commitment. Before drifting off to sleep that night, the friends shared one final reflection. They realized that the royal guards had taught them something more profound than any casual sightseeing experience could offer. That respect, discipline, and professionalism are timeless virtues, capable of inspiring admiration and shaping behavior without a single word. The memory of the guards, standing silently, steadfast and dignified, would remain with them forever, a silent lesson that they would carry through all their days.